Hey there, people. Just gonna try and get Kostas on. There we go. Get the camera working. That'd be good. So we're gonna chat with Kostas today about injection molding composites. So let's get him in. Send that request. Molding composites. And how he's doing them. He's shared quite a few cases. There he is. That was quick.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. I didn't even get time to call you Dr. K before you got on.
Nah. That was 7-8 years ago, not anymore.
Yeah, seven years ago on floor 20, wasn't it?
Was it 7? Okay.
So yeah, it'll be 7. Because I'm 4 years out now.
Fair enough. You know better. I was there yesterday actually at the scene of the crime, and I mean I've had so many students over the years, and most people I don't remember. But one thing I remember about you was like 5 o'clock, everyone would leave and you would stay behind to ask questions. And like for a keen teacher like myself, I enjoyed that. Most teachers would say, "Oh, come on, man, I want to go home now."
But polishing those temporary crowns, that's what that was. That was good. Well, I hope I'll be back on floor 20 with you soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to hear that. If you're gonna do more training, I mean, most people are gonna think you've reached your level, and removable pros is the thing for you, and you're very good at it, and you inspire people. So keep going, man. Keep going.
I must have had a really good third-year tutor, Andreas, who did all the dentures.
Fair enough. But well, I found my little niche, and that's kind of different type of not quite border molding. I mean, I love my ugly dentures. I love my specialized dentures, and it's in the UK. There's quite kind of there's a market for it. In other countries, you see all the dentures, they're like Hollywood smiles, but here we've got a special market. So
make the most of it.
I've just been impressed with this injectable technique, and I wanted to kind of share some ideas today. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people that don't know Kostas, consultant now?
That's right.
Yeah, consultant pros at Guys Hospital. So he taught me in third year, my fixed part of it. And yeah, you're saying you've really got into sort of injection molding stuff recently. So just, give us a little overview. Where did you when have you started doing that? What sort of pushed you to do it more?
Sure. I mean, it was resins for any restorative dentist, general specialist, it doesn't really matter, is always going to be there every single day. So I just had several cases of toothwear buildups, not necessarily aesthetically driven, more functionally driven. And the results were not consistent. So there are different ways to build up teeth in resin, freehand, partially molded, and I just wanted some consistency. So I was just thinking that, hang on a second, why do we have a wax up, lab-made wax up for veneers and crowns, and for composites we have to go freehand? Just because it's direct, why does it have to be down to how good we feel on the day, or some days it's going to look good and other days it's going to look bad? So I kind of started exploring materials about 3 years ago. Nowadays the materials have changed. So I was using heated restorative composite on semi-clear stents back then, which were kind of cloudy stents, and now things have evolved to the extent that the stents are super clear. I use the product from GC called Exaclear, which is as clear as glass. And also the composites have changed, because the flowables, which we always consider them weak and we're going to use them at the base of our cavities, and we're going to keep them away from the edges as if it's like, ooh, no way. They're actually very highly filled these days. And some of the flowables, some of the injectables are actually more highly filled than restorative pastes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been quite a bit of a learning curve, this technique. Whoever is asking me about this, and after I did a lecture for dentinal tubules, I got lots of questions.
Yeah.
I'm letting people know that, hey, you just do about 4 or 3 cases and then you work out the limitations, but it's kind of idiot-proof in a way. You've got to make an effort to make a mistake, similar to making your temporary crowns and veneers with a stent and bisacryl. I mean, if you've prepped enough, you're going to make it look right. And composites needs space. We know that. So especially incisally, whenever we try and squeeze a tiny bit of composite on an incisor ledge and somebody's a bit of a Braxis, it just comes off. So it needs the volume. So nowadays I use the Genial Universal Injectable, which is flowable composite and injectable composite, highly filled at 69% filler content. And I inject through a clear stent. Now, alternatives to this technique, like something Smile Fast, for example, which is a very fast technique, and it's aiming at doing multiple teeth together. And it may well work, but I'm just personally not interested in doing 6 teeth together. I just want to do slow stuff, not because, I don't know, I mean, I've got better things to do, but the cleanup is something that I'm worried about.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you said you want it to be a lot more simple at that, and you've said about sort of 6 teeth, you're talking really 3 to 3 and things. So Bryce was just saying I'm in this group with the Belgian guys, he's saying, I wonder if it's going to be about Smile Fast, and I was like, not sure it will be. So are you talking aesthetics only? Are you doing it for wear cases? What do you feel the range of it is?
Instead of kind of outlining the cases that are suitable for it, I'm going to do the opposite and outline the cases that are not suitable for it, because there aren't that many.
Shorter list.
Yeah. So I don't differentiate for posteriors or anteriors. I do use it universally. But the cases where it doesn't really become that useful is closing black triangles. Because that technique relies on an injectable kind of composite and a clear stent. So you have to kind of get to it somehow. And usually that vent is down the long axis of the tooth on the incisor ledge, which means that you start injecting from the incisor ledge upwards. So just doing black triangles is probably best to use some BioClear matrices and go freehand. Mind you, the BioClear technique is a bit of an injectable technique. Another situation would be where you want to add, let's say, mesioincisally and essential and distogingivally, kind of in 2 different areas which are not connected. So again, if I just quickly show like a wax up over here, which is like a typical wax up for a 3 to 3 case. This was a diastema case, so aesthetically driven. If you've got kind of a uniform addition of composites, this is going to work beautifully. So I've heard some people saying that, diastemas is not a good idea for injectables. It's a fantastic idea for injectables because you can control the contact with Teflon tape in between, which is much thinner than your metal or your acetate strips. But if you're adding like up here and a little bit down there, these 2 areas are not going to be connected. that injectable technique is not going to work, because they have to kind of go to each other. So otherwise, toothware cases are fantastic, whether that's erosion or attrition. You just wax it up, mock it up to verify aesthetics and occlusion, and then you just execute. You eliminate the unpleasant surprises, you eliminate the guesswork. Everything is kind of predetermined, exactly like crowns and veneers. So very few contraindications.
Bryce just asking there, do you ever do prep for the teeth, and if so, how much? Or is it just purely additive?
Good point. This is typically purely additive, but we all know that there's not such a thing. That we do a little bit of prepping. Now, what is that prepping? You want to get rid of the intact aprismatic enamel, and you want to clean the teeth. So I will always use air abrasion, which will kill the shine of enamel, because it will remove some microns, and that will remove biofilm, cheese, whatever is on the teeth on that day, and maybe a little bit of disking, just to roughen things up a bit. So I'm just going to freshen up the substrate, and if you've got big toothware cases where there is just a little bit of a ring of enamel and tons of dentin, again, I want to take air abrasion or a disc, or maybe a little bit of a burr on that dentin, because it's going to be sclerotic and not really amenable to edging. So I'm going to, just because composites are kind of prepless, it doesn't mean we're not going to do a little bit of surface treatment. So just something to enhance hybridizing.
I think, so in terms of, obviously we sort of said it on wear cases there, when are you looking at this instead of porcelain rehab? Like, is it purely financial? Are you using this as a stepping stone to sort of, especially if you've got quite advanced, you're changing OVD maybe, you're seeing how they get on with it? Is it, would you always go for porcelain if the patient wants it, or is it sort of
good point?
You're viable on both.
The main difference between the two, apart from the cost, which we know that it's there, is longevity. So we have clear evidence that the ceramics, let's say veneers on enamel, will give 10 to 12 years. We know that. It's like for the last 30 years we know that. As far as resins are concerned, different studies from different designs, whether it's a dull case, whether it's a non-dull case, have come up with longevities, and the universal kind of figure is, let's say, 3 to 5 years. They're high maintenance. You're going to need to have them polished. You're going to need to have a hygienist. You're going to need to have them repaired if they chip. But at some point, there's going to be a more kind of, not catastrophic failure, but multiple little failures, which means that we've got to go in and replace them. So that is something I make very clear in terms of consenting, but has nothing to do with injectables. It's freehands or partially molded. Speaking of the injectables, there is no independent study to say that, hey, they do that so well or not. So the highly filled injectable materials have only been around for a little while. So having independent, like I'm trying to set one up at King's, but nobody wants to do it. But anyway, I'll keep trying. There you go. You can.
I'll come do it with
you. So we've got some studies on resins. So that's the main difference between the two, longevity. But in terms of aesthetics, I never ever tell them that, hey, if you want it to look good, go for porcelain, because that's not true. I'm throwing some cases to patients, and I'm not telling them which one is which, and a bigger percentage are going for the injectables, because all the anatomy from the lab is there. Okay, same for the ceramics, but they're very highly polishable. So especially that GC material is very highly polishable and retains gloss. So I'm not going to say the good-looking one is more costly, but I have to cut your teeth down. It's mainly down to longevity.
Just had a little question pop up. Are you making the mock-up digitally with software-based or analog with wax? And do you have, the reason behind that?
Good point. I mean, I'm just going to show the same picture again. What you have here is a printed model of my trios. I can't remember, but it's an analog wax up. So there's pros and cons in both. So for those of you who have worked off digital models, you will have this kind of concentric kind of marks that it's down to the resolution. The clear silicone, that Exoclear, is that detailed that it actually replicates this onto the tooth, and I can see like little circles from the printed model, and I'm like, man, this is no good. So I actually prefer having a stone model and conventional wax up on a stone model, because it doesn't have this problem. So it's one of the few kind of situations where I prefer the analog technique. You can have fully digital wax ups, and they are great at mirroring a tooth. But what the fully digital wax ups lack in is having secondary and tertiary anatomy. It's working this on Exocad or whatever software you may want to use is not as well thought through as the hands of excellent technicians. So carving this away is on normal wax, in my opinion, is better than a fully digital wax up.
But I guess technology is going to get there, because at the minute it's, are the people, whether it's iTero or Trios, or are they looking at this as, are they going to put a load of time into this right now, or are they focusing on their crown and bridge scanning rather than the wax ups? And I think planning is going more digital, so it probably will improve as well.
Yes, yes, I agree. It's definitely, I mean, with different patient simulations, it will improve. I just find it a personal preference that a well-crafted manual wax up is giving me better results. So I've tried all the different techniques and all the different materials, and I mean, the typical workflow, if I do 6 teeth, is I do alternate teeth, like a canine, a central and a lateral, and then the other 3. So the actual doing of the procedure is very quick, because I hybridize, edge hybridize and inject in about 5 minutes for all 3 teeth. But the cleanup takes about 20 minutes. So the good thing with the cleanup is that you're going to have some that goes laterally and maybe on the gingival margin. And then I use a blade and IPR strips to remove the excess, finish them off as if I'm only doing 3 teeth before I do the other 3. So on a concept like some other concepts which do multiple teeth together with restorative composite or flowable or whatever, it doesn't matter. And they've got little strips in between to prevent them from bonding together. It's I mean, the cleanup must be difficult. It can't be less difficult than the technique that I'm describing. So I'm not presenting this technique as super fast, but I'm presenting it as a technique which is very predictable, very consistent, because it's your lab technician's anatomy, and as we all know, they are much better than us.
Absolutely. You're doing very well not to say smile fast loads of times, so well.
No, listen, I mean, it's not just smile fast. There's other ones. One of my students was showing me this morning a technique from Liverpool where they're actually injecting there's big holes in the clear stents, and they're injecting restorative composites, probably warmed
Heated,
up to,
I'm guessing, yeah.
warmed up to 70 degrees. So yes, that's going to work too, but I'm finding the cleanup with like a flowable material is quite a bit. So I can't imagine how the cleanup is going to be with restorative paste. I can only imagine it's going to be worse.
We've had a bunch of questions about workflow. Well, we've had a suggestion saying, have you tried pumice and a little bit of buffing on the printed model to get rid of the printing lines? But I think you're saying your issue is more about the sort of tertiary anatomy that you can get rather than just
That's a good point.
lines.
That's a good point. The thing is that the lab kind of sends me the wax up, and where have I got it? They also send me the clear stent that comes with it. Mm-hmm. So I then go ahead and make holes through that, and I kind of inject the material. So there's no much point in me prepping the model because it's already been on there. The stent has already been made. But I will take a disc on the actual tooth, and that will kill this digital kind of marks. These stents, just to make it super clear, they have to be pressurized. They have to be made in a pressure pot, in a hydro flask. If you do it yourself, you're going to get tons of porosity. So I started doing this technique. I said, okay, I'll take a little bit of clear silicone. I was using Memosil on the brows, which is blue material. Actually, it's not even clear.
Yeah, it's bluish, yeah.
And I could just about see through it, but tons of bubbles, which means voids, and like it doesn't save you any time. Might as well go freehand. But Exacclear is super clear. It has to be though in a hydro flask. So the lab charges me about 20 quid for that stent. So the whole process is a bit more costly than direct freehand composite, but still a third or a quarter compared to ceramics.
Yeah. So that actually answered the next two questions, which is, do you make the stent yourself on top of the wax up? So you've already said that. And then Debbie's asked, do you use the same stent? Because you're saying about alternating teeth. So are you using the same stent, or do you have two of them to do the alternating teeth? So yeah, I imagine she's saying, do you do one that's got the upper right 3, the upper right 1, and sort of step like that?
If you order a digital wax up, at the press of a button, well, at 3 presses of the button, you can delete the 3 teeth, the wax up on the canine, the lateral, and the central. And then you can make a stent based on that. 3 pre-op teeth, 3 build-up teeth. So that's your first stent, which uses the pre-op teeth as reference and to inject for the 3 you're working on. And then you have a full stent for all 6 of them to do the other 3. I don't like this technique because I'm worried that the second stent is not going to sit as well as the first. So
what if you use the one with all 6 on, it's going to go back on.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So I keep using this. So if I just quickly go onto a little picture that I have here. There we go. So what we can see here is this upper right one is a tooth that I injected on, and I put a bisacral mock-up, just the part of the mock-up on the upper left one and the upper right 2 to prevent the excess going sideways. So I'm trapping the injectable material. So these stoppers work well and prevent the need for making 2 sets of stents. So that's what I currently use, so that I only use 1 stent, but the excess sideways is minimized.
Perfect. I think one of the other questions we had, and you sort of touched on it earlier, is like longevity versus a conventional composite. Conventionally placed, layered composite and all that. So if you're thinking that the sort of physical properties of, is it the Genio you're using?
I use the Genio universal injectable, yes, which is kind of a thixotropic flowable. You kind of shape it in whatever shape and it doesn't slump. It's very highly filled. There are some papers which show that flowable composites are comparable to restorative composites, but that is not specific to injection molding technique. So it was only in the last 3 years, I remember Didier Dishi probably came up with the first highly filled flowable from Inspiro. And it is like, I love that material. It was amazing. Anyway, so they haven't been available for that long. And in order for a study to be made, it takes quite a bit of time, and they've started to be published. So but by the time the evidence is out there, we're going to be already into the next thing. So my personal view is that it's an amazing technique because it has excellent adaptation, better than manual packing of resin composite, which is subject to voids. But the main benefit is the aesthetic benefit of having perfect mesial line angles on centrals, the perikymata, the grooves and the lobes, which, yes, I can achieve on a good day if I sit there for an hour. But can I do it on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday? Can I, like a GDP...
Can you see the patient afterwards?
Yeah, correct. Can a GDP who's just graduated do this consistently? So this is about cheating. This is about copy pasting. This is about being consistent.
And Bryce asked the question there then. So are you concerned if you're doing a particularly large one about polymerization shrinkage or anything like that? Because obviously, we're always taught incremental layers, not using too much because, shrinkage and things like that.
That's the C factor concept is not completely dead. I mean, nowadays composites, they shrink by about 2-3%, whereas that number was significantly high before. So when you're working in a cavity in restorative dentistry, you have to consider it. But these injectables, they're actually going on a kind of smooth surface composites. They're not like class 1 or class 2. So usually it's a case of adding a bit of length and adding on the facial, just like porcelain veneers. Okay, in some situations you're going to have quite a bit of erosion, which covers the whole of the occlusal. But then again, I'm not going to say that there is no shrinkage, but it's not within opposing walls, which creates kind of tension and stress. So on the few occasions that I've done, like on posterior teeth, I haven't had any issues, and I have 3-year follow-ups. So, but I don't have the evidence for this. So I use it posteriorly for worn cases, because getting the occlusion right on working on a 4, 5, 6, and 7 in a big toothware case is such a nightmare if you go direct. So you just verify this with a mock-up, make sure the mounting is correct, and then you just execute in an injectable. Can see another question which was kind of important, and that had to do with retraction. So retraction,
yeah, I was going to say just general. I was literally just about to ask about that. So like general workflow, you've already said, air abrasions and things like that. But what else are you doing? You saying PTFE separating? Are you using retraction cords?
Yes, I'm just trying to find a little picture. So this is probably the best picture I can illustrate that with. So here I'm going to be kind of injecting on the central and the 3. A retraction cord will help massively to retract the gingiva a little bit. But the PTFE will wrap around the papilla, and as I'm injecting on this canine, the composite will not be allowed to go into the lateral. So I'm creating a frame within which I'm trapping the material. That can be, some cases I will use a rubber dam, or the retraction cord, in my opinion, is pretty much the same as a rubber dam for these cases, backed up with an Optragate. So the surface treatment of the tooth is going to be good, clean, and roughen with air abrasion and maybe some mild disking, and isolate the tissues basically, and try to minimize the excess. Don't allow the material to go this way. The PTFE stops that. And then you take a 12 blade, you make a vertical cut, and it just, whatever goes into the gingiva is unbonded, it comes off. The retraction cord offers a very crisp margin between the material you want it to stay and any excess. So that's kind of my little tips for isolating. So If there's a problem with this case, with this technique, it's the management of the excess. So you will have some excess. We rely on, is it like impression taking? We always use more than we need, and we have to have escape channels for the excess. So I make the vents in such a way so that the bulk of the excess actually comes through the vent where I'm injecting through. And using retraction cord and PTFE in the way that I showed you prevents the gingival excess.
Oh, perfect. Guys, if anyone else has any questions, keep putting them in. There's a question box, or just put it in the comments. You've touched on it already, but we had a few questions about aesthetics. So someone asked, are they always going to be opaque and bulky? I think obviously you've shown that they're not necessarily going to be. I guess that's more coming down to you using a single shade composite.
Yes, that's...
can you add character to these teeth? Can you go back and add it? Be saying the sort of tertiary, secondary anatomy, or tertiary anatomy at least, is all there.
Correct. So another limitation that I didn't mention is if you're dealing with a trauma for a 12-year-old who has tons of opalescence and halos and incisal kind of anatomy. This injectable technique is designed for monoshade. There are ways to make it layered, but it's designed for monoshade. There is no way of injecting 3/4 of that material, expecting it to take a specific shape, and then do a facial layer. So you can go full contour and cut back, which does work.
Like veneer over, almost freehand.
Correct.
Veneer over.
It's like what the lab technicians do with ceramics. They just do a little bit of an incisal cutback, and they add the like magic incisal effects. But the brand that I use is actually coming in multiple shades. So the good thing about Genial and most modern restoratives is that they've got their enamel shades and the kind of dentin shades. So, for example, if it's a peg lateral, I will only be using an enamel shade. I don't need to block out light. If I'm adding incisal length for a short 6mm sample and I want to make it 10, I will use a dense opaque material. But then again, these are not dense that they're kind of opaque. They're a good balance. But if you want to add incisal effects and halos and a little bit of blue and a little bit of this, you need to cut back. So if you've got very like young patients or an elderly kind of patient with translucency because of wear, that is not going to be replicated well in this technique. So if anything, that is a limitation. But shades-wise, there's about 16 shades, kind of universal Vita shades, and then the enamel and dentins within the Genial universal injectable.
One little question again, just about the retraction. Assuming it's quite a thin retraction cord, if it's too much, it's going to maybe deflect the tissues, distort it, or stop the stent seating or anything like that. Any particular sizes that you worry with?
Thankfully, the tissues are quite bouncy, and even if I've got a thicker retraction cord, it's not going to stop my stent from sitting down. What is actually more likely to stop my index from sitting down is like a conventional rubber dam placement, because it relies on going on multiple teeth for referencing and on a little bit of soft tissue. So if you've got a thick dam and palately it's kind of lifting off and you have to kind of squeeze it down, that is going to cause a bit of an issue. But using a thicker cord, which is going to retract the gingiva outwards and downwards, just because it's soft tissue, it's not going to lift the stent. So I'm aiming to use rubber dam more and more, but if the stent is big and it covers multiple teeth, it's getting a little bit in the way. Maybe I'm doing something wrong.
I think that's covered that really well. So I think, what do you think are the next sort of, obviously you've been doing this, if you're saying you're having 3 or 4 year recalls of this now, what you obviously feel like you're doing this really reliably. What kind of things would you want to improve this process? Is there a material change that's going to be better? Is there,
Good point.
obviously you've sort of said about the digital wax ups, if
Yeah.
you can get rid of the printing and things.
If anything, the mistakes are more kind of my mistakes, technique kind of mistakes, because when you're injecting, it's like we all know how we inject our pro-temp or Luxatemp tips into our stents, and we make our temporary veneers. We always get voids.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And if you don't see them, it's because you don't know that they are there, but you always get them. So if you move that injectable tip up and down within the stent too many times, you incorporate air. So on the recalls that I see, I do see some brown little spots here and there because there are voids that I missed at the beginning. So I just try to insert the tip, hit tooth, and keep injecting until the whole thing is filled up, and then keep removing in one motion to avoid voids. In terms of the materials, I don't really see any room for improvement, because they have the glassy enamel-like materials as well as the denser Essex style kind of bleach materials. So it's more about the technique, but it took us about 5 attempts to work out the right way to do them with my lab. So I had to call them a few times, told them what I wanted, that the clear stent has to be super clear, and it has to be a uniform thickness. So the distance between the stent and the tooth has to be 5 millimeters from 5 to 5. I don't want it sloping up and down. So we had to change a few things so that it's kind of consistent and standardized. So it's not a case that, hey, you can call up tomorrow your lab, ask them for a clear stent, and they're going to know. You have to teach them. You have to kind of tell them what you want, because that's probably a technique they might not be familiar with. So only today I set up, I agreed to do some hands-on courses for GC. So hey, and
got the plug in there. I didn't even know you were going to do the plug. That was good.
Well, as I said, I might as well throw it in. So these are going to be the GC headquarters in the summer. So it's a technique that, with a little bit of hands-on training, just a few hours and a couple of attempts, you're ready to go the next day. So it's a new skill. It's, yes, you need a wax up. Yes, you need a stent. Whereas a direct technique, you just do it there and then. Mm-hmm. So it has the faffing around of veneers and crowns, but you save a lot of time because you don't use discs and you don't use burrs to create anatomy. The anatomy is there for you. So any questions, let me know, but I'll do some hands-on courses from the summer onwards with GC.
That's great. I think that's partly what I was going to say. So if you've got someone watching this now and seen that case and has maybe gone and looked at, because you've shared quite a few on your Instagram, they've seen something like that and they think, yeah, this sounds like something I want to have a go with. What would you say for people trying this for the first? Obviously, go and do your course with GC. But what would you say for if you're looking at something, is this suitable? What would be good for a first one to try? What's going to be an easier thing to do? Obviously, don't do a 7-to-7 upper and lower wear case. But
yes, absolutely. So the typical kind of case is where you've got somebody with no tooth wear, a little bit of crowding, some kind of twisted teeth. They refuse orthodontics, and you say, well, okay, we can kind of do some bondings and do restorative orthodontics. So that's a good technique for this, because they haven't got tooth wear, they're not going to brax, they're not going to break things up. They've already declined orthodontics, so you have offered them that. And it's a case of chatting with a trusted technician and picking up the phone and saying, hey, I want to try this clear stent technique. Have you heard about it? The technicians, they always know more than we think they do. So pick up the phone, call
Hey, guys.
call a trusted lab. I
Hmm.
mean, I've got labs which are kind of that expensive or a little bit less expensive. So some labs will actually charge 40 or 50 quid for a unit waxing up, which is a lot of money. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we kind of get excellent results with £20 wax ups per tooth and 20 quid for the stents. So the kind of work up to the whole case is about £140,
Hmm.
not 600 like at some other company.
So it's a bit of a recurring theme now within these live sessions, but I mean the first one was literally on lab communication, but obviously you said there work with someone that you know, obviously crown and bridge stuff. They're doing wax ups anyway as part of that. You know what particularly, you know, in terms of designing the smiles, what stuff are you communicating? You know, obviously there must be some photos involved. You're talking to the
Yes, I
technician.
mean,
What kind of stuff are you talking to them
see it
about?
this way, from the lab's point of view, they're actually cutting into the direct dentistry market because whatever you would be doing directly and you're not involved the lab, actually the lab is getting something out of this. You send them impressions or scans and a set of photographs and you're prescribing a wax up as if you are doing ceramics. It has zero difference. The fact that we just position the teeth where the teeth need to be. And that is irrespective of material. So they might be wonky, they might be short. So we just do a smart design, analog, digital, whatever way. But you need photographs, yes. Just a few basic pictures. And then the lab will give you this wax up. And what you do with it is entirely up to you. You can actually use it to prep for veneers or crowns, or you can use it to do the injectable technique. So if anything, for the lab is kind of a little bit of something out of nothing. They're making a bit of an income from cases that they would never do any workup for. So they're happy about this. And it doesn't take a lot of time and effort because they just use a little bit of wax. They use a little bit of clear silicone. So it's got kind of low overheads. But okay, the patient has to come back and forth. When I do these injectable cases, I break it down in 3 appointments: the diagnosis, photographs, models, blah, blah, blah. Second, for the mock-up to approve it, because I want the patient's approval. I don't want unpleasant surprises, and we've all had unpleasant surprises at the end. So I want them to approve it and give me the green light, and then it's just about the execution. So that's the 3 visits. So it costs, let's say, 10–20% more than direct composites.
Yeah, extra surgery time and lab fees as well. You said, you know, a few photos that you need for each one. So, you know, what are there? Is that, you know, full face, a retracted,
yes,
occlusals?
exactly what you can see of me,
Yeah.
because that's the lab can relate the eyes to the teeth. If anything, the teeth have to be slightly apart.
Yeah.
When you ask people to smile, they all do this. We don't smile like this. We smile with the teeth apart, like hey.
Yeah.
So the incisal plane has to be visible. So another picture that I do a lot is the tooth display at rest. This one. So I'm not really showing a lot of incisor because I'm 43, but it shows the lab how much they need to increase so that the patient will actually show a little bit of tooth. And a close-up smile so that they see the dynamics with the posterior teeth. And these 3 pictures are enough. If I were to pick 3, full face, smiling, close-up smile, and the repose. And that is enough to work out where they need to add. What I do is I use my iPad with a pencil and I kind of make some outlines, and I add little corners where I would like them to wax up. But usually when the lab techs, because they've been doing this for 20–30 years, they kind of look at my prescription and yeah. I've done about 1 million wax ups, and now you're telling me where to wax up. But it has to be kind of dentist led, because you know the smile dynamics, and if you're just sending a model to a lab wax up 3:3 with nothing else, this is like pointless. It's like, what is the lab going to do with this? They know nothing about the patient, so they need a few pictures, even some iPhone pictures. You don't have to have an SLR picture.
Yeah, and like as you say there, you know the patient side of it, so it's no. Yeah, we'd like talk. I don't do that much composite stuff, or at least I don't share that much composite stuff. But I do obviously a lot of the denture stuff, and that first appointment, actually, the consultation, I'm going, well, what did you like about your old smile? What didn't you like? What do you want us to recreate? And you say you could just send to them, say 3:3, but they might actually want to have pointy canines, or whatever it is. So at least you can give that input as part as well, like what the patient wants as well, rather than just they'll see and they'll do what they want in the lab.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same way you have a trying appointment for dentures. Well, give them a trying appointment for composites. I mean, what's wrong with composites? Why do they have to be direct? Why does I mean, what I'm lacking with my injectable technique is that wow factor of the big reveal at the end. I actually, if I take a picture or a video of them, I actually tell them, please look surprised. But
you saw it 3 weeks ago. But
they saw it 3 weeks ago. It's like it's like completely killed the excitement. Yeah. But I'd rather have this than them trusting my skills, because yes, I might be skilled on a Monday morning, but then on a Tuesday afternoon, if I haven't got the mesoline angles correct and the incisal plane is a little bit like this, it's just lack of consistency. So many people can do this predictable direct dentistry. I'm not promoting laziness, but I still use direct. I saw like an 8-year-old who smashed up his tooth, and I spent an hour and 15 minutes for one single composite. So this is not a substitute for everything, but for these aesthetically driven cases, or the tooth wear cases where occlusion becomes important, the injectable technique is an awesome technique. We've been doing it for 40 years for crowns and veneers. Why not for resin?
And when you're doing, so you said that second appointment, you're doing trial smile, etc. Are you able to make adjustments at that stage? If you say have the occlusion not quite right, or you want to change the 3:3, and how do you go about that? Is that something you're adjusting in the mouth and then scanning?
So, let me put it this way: the things that I straighten out on the mock-up visit is, first of all, the shading, because if you're adding on the whole of the facial of the teeth, which is basically composite veneers, you have full control. But if you're adding on just little corners here and there, you have to blend in with the tooth. So I will actually use a composite mock-up, like the final restorative composite, to mock it up with, because it's an injectable, so I can do it.
So not a bisacral.
Correct, absolutely. Because I've been stung on a few occasions that kind of it looks okay on the bisacral, but not on the restorative. So it's an expensive mock-up, but it's worth it, because it makes the execution stress-free. Now, if things are a little bit off, and let's say the incisal plane is off, which can happen on dentures, composites, whatever, this is a big discrepancy. So I will ask for a retrying. But if the upper right 3 is a little bit bulkier than the upper left 3, and I know that if I just adjust it facially, it's going to be okay, then I tell the patient that, listen, this is a minor thing. We're going to go for the kill, and I'll get it right on the day. If the occlusion is off for a 5-5 tooth wear case, it means your mounting was wrong. So I've got to take a new bite record with a mock-up in place and ask for remounting, because whatever you see on the mock-up day is going to happen 3 weeks after.
And were you just saying there partial coverage of teeth? Are you doing any bevels or anything like that, or are you able just to get a flush blend?
No, I mean, the bevel idea is more kind of applicable to the kind of class 4 cavity, either because of caries or trauma. So that requires a bit of layering. that requires layering. So the injectable technique is basically for peg laterals, teeth that need to look bigger because patients want them bigger, toothware cases that have been shrunk down and you need to add volume without the fancy incisal effects. But just because it's monoshade, you can't really get crazy incisal effects. So a typical class 4 cavity, I would do it in a layered, old-fashioned. It's not old-fashioned, but it's a layered technique. But adding on intact teeth, because they need to be a bit bigger, either because of aesthetics or wear, I'm just going to do a bit of surface treatment for better bond rather than optical effects.
Fine. I think we'll just go through the last few questions. I think it kicks us off at an hour. It's been we've run really well. So we had a couple of other questions earlier on that we lost, and if anyone has any others, please just put them through now. So someone asked, what pressure pot would you recommend? So do you know what the lab's using? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I'm about to buy one. I mean,
do your own wax ups, cut the lab
where
out.
I work.
All that thing about giving the lab some more work, and you're like, I'm going to do it myself now.
I'm about to buy one. If my nurse finds out that I'm going to get a pressure cook, she's going to kill me. I mean, there's no space. There's like toys hanging from everywhere. But what the labs use is a dry pressure pot, not the typical kind of lid which you close up in water. It's just under pressure. So if you make your own stents, you could benefit from having a small pressure pot. They actually cost 130 quid, and they look like the size of I don't know, like two boxes of gloves together. They're quite small, but you need an airline to create the pressure. So like a proper airline, not like a 3-in-1. So it's not so easy to set up chair side, but the benefits are huge. I mean, all the patty stents that the Crown and Bridge labs send us, they are pressurized, and when you cut them, you feel that, hang on a second, this is really hard, man. Why is my patty stent, I'm cutting on it and it's like butter? That's because it's cured in a pressure pot. So it's a better set, it's a better polymerization, and that is the same for the clear silicone. So I would never ever do an injectable case with my own clear stent. It's just going to be, you can see the bubbles, it looks like Swiss cheese, it's like full of holes everywhere. So the pressure pot is a big benefit, but then again, that comes to the conversation that you need to have with the lab. So if you're thinking of, Aquapress is good, you're right. If you're thinking of starting this case, pick up the phone, ask your lab that, hey, I want to do some wax up cases and then injectable composites. Let's find materials, and your labs can help. If your labs cannot help, I can.
One of you've answered it just there, and we answered it earlier. Was, sorry, I was late to the live. Any thoughts on the GC Exoclear for chair side? But you said bubbles and whatnot. Exoclear, you said probably the best of them, but not to
the competitors to Exoclear is materials from Zermac. I can't remember now the other names, but none of them are clear. I mean, I want to be able to see the tooth. I mean, I have a picture now, but I don't want to run the clock. It's like glass. It's like glass, okay? You can perfectly see where the composite kind of is going in, and you can actually see the composite just filling up. So the Exoclear composite is by far the best, the Exoclear silicone. So as far as the composites, there are other brands. The Curaray brand is a good brand. The Ivoclar one is a very low filler content. So it looks fantastic because it's very translucent, it's very glassy, but it doesn't have the Tetric EvoFlow. It doesn't have a high filler content. So the GC one is a good balance. So some more questions.
Another one, oh, loads of questions. It's great. Do you prefer to use enamel shades for the, or is there translucency issue?
No, because typically, like when we do porcelain veneers, there's always a little bit of adding length. And the minute you use a pure enamel shade, you're always going to have that line. And it's a bugger to avoid. So I will use the universal A1, B1 or bleach shades, which have quite a bit of chroma, which have quite a bit of density to it. Not too opaque, but they are not glassy. They will not light penetrate through. So I will only use the enamel ones when I'm just adding facially and I'm not adding length in any way, because the enamel shades, like adult enamel or junior enamel, which is what Genius calls them, they're glassy. They give this life and depth to the filling, which we all look for. But if we're adding length, I will use the more universal A1, B1.
Perfect. If you wanted minor additions to incisal ledges on intact teeth, would you do a freehand, or would you look at doing this with one shade? I think you sort of covered that earlier with more sort of, if it's a big thing, lots of little changes, you've got that control then of doing it lab designed.
The critical thing to minor additions to the incisal edges is how much volume do you have. If you've got quite a bit of volume to add, both freehand will work and both injectable will work. But if you're adding on the distal corner of the lateral incisor 0.5 millimeter of composite, and you check the guidance edge to edge and then ask people to go side to side, and they're going to be hitting on that, it's going to come off. So incisal composites, they need 1 millimeter. Again, I haven't got the evidence for this. This is purely empirical, but they need the strength of 1 millimeter. And whether you go direct or injectable.
Perfect. I mean, it looks like we're all out of questions there.
Cool.
Any more? Obviously, I'm sure you'll be happy for people to drop you a message. But Matt, this has been awesome in the best way possible. I feel like I'm back in the third year fixed pros lesson. It's been really good having some teaching from you again, and so hopefully I'll have some more soon. I think we're going to get some really good feedback, so we might have to get you back on. So I hope you get another topic.
Well, it's just like a subject that I enjoy a lot. Every case that I do it better than the one before. There are kind of some initial mistakes to make, and yes, just pick a simple, predictable kind of additive case on a few number of teeth. You're always going to have the backup of doing it direct should things not go right, but you need the help with the lab. Just like ceramics, you cannot do it on your own. You have to have excellent communication. Sometimes I text and chat to my kind of lab techs more than I do to my wife and my son.
Careful.
but you need to have a very good communication, and they're just happy to get a share of the markets, because they wouldn't have got any business out of this otherwise. So it's a win-win.
I agree with Dr. Pros. Everyone needs to give this genius, and he's definitely talking about you, a follow. So yeah, fantastic stuff. And cheers, Dr. K.
Cool,
See
man.
you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Let's get you on again.
Bye now.